Welcome to the CIES webinar number 5. We are this afternoon dealing with a new topic, sports development projects, current status and perspectives. We have 3 guests today. Let me introduce them by alphabetic order. I will start with an old friend of mine and an old friend of CIES who has been teaching in our courses for 15 years now, and I would like to introduce Dr. Vladimir Borkovic, who is currently in Belgrade. Hello, Vladimir, how are you?
Hello, Pierre. When you say old friend, it sounds that we are old people, no? But we know each other since childhood, right?
We know each other for a long time, that's it.
Exactly.
Vladimir is the CEO of a company, and I would like you to just in 2 words to say what the company is, and then we move to the other ones.
Thank you very much, Pierre, for the invitation. Greetings to all the listeners and the viewers of this webinar. Really happy to share with you the experiences based on the work of Street Football World, which is a global network and organization that harnesses the power of football and sport in general. And we work with over 140 network members in 90 countries worldwide. Today, I'm happy to be joined with other students who I also, in a way, teach about Street Football World and Football for Good for the last decade and a half, and really great to have them on board as well.
Thank you. So next one is Khadija Kazmi, who is an alumna from the FIFA Master 18th edition, and is joining us from Karachi. Hi, Khadija. How are you?
Hi, Pierre. Good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit your experience in the field of sports development programs in a word?
Of course. I've started working in Karachi only to set up a women's division at a local men's club. Initially, we had started just to have a professional team, but we realized that we needed much more than that. We needed the community on board. And so for the past about 10 years, I've been working in that, which included a lot more to do with developing a girls and a women's setup and actually working with grants and actually just doing the foundation work in Karachi. And currently I'm working at a school to set up a PE curriculum because we've never had that in our country.
Fantastic. Very, very looking forward to hear what you will have to say later. Our third guest this afternoon is a FIFA Master alumni as well, Creesen Naicker, who is joining us from Durban in South Africa. And Creesen was already at the time he was a FIFA Master student 10 years ago. I remember that you were already involved in development programs. So can you tell us just shortly what you're doing at the moment?
The broader CIES family. Yeah, so I currently focus a lot of my attention or energy on an extension of the sport for development programs that I was involved in, and that's actually early learning and technology in education. But that stemmed from many years of working in sport for development and realizing the broader needs of the young participants in our programs.
Great. So I will start to ask you a very simple question. We have seen that in the last 10 weeks or so, sports has been completely changed. And one of the questions we may ask ourselves, how do development projects in sport cope? And how did you continue to work with this reality of the last 10 or 15 weeks? So I will start with Vladimir.
Thank you very much, Pierre, and hello to Khadija and Creesen. Nice to see you again. Well, I think it's a very special situation, and the pandemic is just I would say, a symptom of what is happening worldwide in terms of neglecting what the planet is telling us. We are at the brink of destroying humanity, actually. So in that sense, sport really becomes just a medium, as it was in the last 3 decades, 3.5, for many community organizations, to try to transform them and being part of the first sector to influence also the second and especially the governmental sector to change things, especially in communities that are desperately in need of transformation. In that sense, I, yes, see through the work of my colleagues and through some surveys that many organizations on the local level are struggling to survive. But as you all know, we use sport as a medium, we use sport as a catalyst. And I actually don't have too many fears and any anxiety that this situation will actually evolve into something positive. I will be talking about that, actually being the eternal optimist, that we can transform both communities and humanity towards better. And I, yes, see a crisis, but through crisis, we just learn. So let's talk about that today.
Fantastic. And I know you are an optimist, and I experience that. Khadija, what do you think is the current situation for developing in
It's definitely a very difficult situation, especially in the sport industry here. We're living in a developing country where sport is not considered seriously anyway. And a lot of the coaches and everyone who work on daily wages, and that becomes a huge problem because they're undergoing pay cuts. And the sustainability of organizations are in question. But one of the things that which is very evident is the people who work in sports for development are a lot more empathetic, and they are the ones who want to carry out these health drives, and they're the ones who want to do all the groundwork in assisting all of these the people that need help in the communities. So you see a lot of that. You see a lot of that being transformed, and you see them stepping up in that regard. In terms of sport, obviously, that's taken a back step right now. I hoping that it kind of changes the overall outlook and how we're going to go after this. I do think we need to restart in terms of looking at sustainable models, and I am excited to see, like Vlad said, how this is going to turn out to be and how we can move forward once we're out of these times.
Sorry, Pierre, I think you were muted there for a bit, so I didn't catch. You're muted again now. So
I just wanted to know how you manage. It's very sensitive, the microphone. I wanted to know how in your organization you're able to cope with the current situation, and how your day-to-day work is.
Yeah, so I think Vlad brought up an incredibly important point, which was around sustainability, and our programs that had this woven into it. So they were very local driven, very in fact volunteer driven, have been very sustainable, because while there is an active participation of massive groups, sport as recreation has been, or at least I guess activity as recreation has still been allowed. And then the groups and sort of the lexicon of sport to life, or values through sport, have made massive progress, have been embedded in the program. So those have made it sustainable in those ways. However, our activities that have been more around, sports as a pursuit of excellence or entertainment, or have obviously taken a huge hit.
Well, you all three started about the impact of the volunteers, the impact of the funders. Tell us a bit more about that. I don't know who would like to start. It's interesting to see how these dynamics on sports development is developing, and where you see some scenarios for the future. Who wants to start? I don't know. Creesen, would you like to continue on that? Or Vladimir? Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to respond to that as an extension. We found that we've kind of had three different reactions from funders, particularly in the space. One is almost knee-jerk reactive kind of space, which has come from a lot of the corporates in funded programs, because I think they're under real business pressure. And those are the ones where, it's the staff daily wages, the transport, the logistics, all of that's under real pressure, because that's not happening they're taking an attitude of sort of no work, no pay, which obviously really questions sustainability in the long run. But we've had the majority of our funders have been more in sort of a stable holding pattern, going, let's keep everyone connected, active. Let's see how we use technology. Let's see how we use the values-based approach that we have to educate people about COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera. And so they've kept a fairly kept up, but in a new format that's compliant with the health protocols. And then we've had one funder in particular, and I won't mention who, but who's been extremely proactive. We've gone, COVID-19 is going to come. It's going to cause massive disruption. But our mission, because we're mission driven, is to get young people active and to teach them lots of important values through sport. And they're setting a 3-year plan, going, okay, we'll go through this with you. What's the minimum you need to make sure that we lose as little as possible from your program? So the funding experience has been quite varied across the board. Everything from stop now to don't worry, we're with you the whole way through this.
Yeah, I would like to continue because we received a question from Priti Sharma from India who said, I want to use power of sports as a tool for children for a better cause and future and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, in rural areas. By 2030, sport will achieve SDGs, social development goals. As I have made one project, and I also have been doing a lot, but no organization and partners are collaborating with one. I can put my plans in action. So how do you have some tips for people who like to have good projects and at this moment they don't find any kind of collaboration? Vladimir,
yeah, I can pick it up definitely, Pierre. This was not a pain announce. This was spontaneous coming from our friend from India. What I can say, first of all, it's great that people in every corner of the globe are trying to change their community. I mean, this is essential to the human race, that we want some progress. And in that sense, my friend from India, please check out the Street Football World website. Go to the Asian continent, check out India, and you will find 6-7 marvelous organizations who will definitely be able to support you, both with some best practice and then also with some recommendations who to contact when it comes to collaboration. And just going a bit back to your question, Pierre, because I think it's a major challenge that we have currently when it comes to funding, fundraising, partnership development in the situation like the pandemic. But I think we should be in a way proud, especially of the funders and partners that are part of Football for Good, because essentially they are there because they have a good spirit and they want to support humanity and human development. So we have a lot of examples. UEFA Foundation for Children, FIFA Foundation, the Supreme Committee of Qatar with Generation Amazing, many football club foundations actually saying to the organizations on the ground, okay, until yesterday we dealt with football as a catalyst. If it's not football, what's the transformation that you can achieve? Our funding will remain with you, don't worry. Transform your activities, transform them towards the current crisis, and then when things come back to the new normal, we will talk again about football. So these kind of partners who understand the essence of human development and community development are already in the field. And that is really great to know that local organizations can still rely on them, even if we're not talking about football and sport in particular, but we're talking about humanitarian crisis currently. We're talking about communities kind of being in real threat for life. These partners still remain on board, and that's really something to applaud about.
It's particularly true in elements regarding as well the question of gender, I think. In the question of understanding that the question of gender is crucial to reduce the gap. What is the situation with potential funders in the case of Karachi? Yeah, Khadija?
Yeah. So it's, I mean, the landscape is a little different. I understand if you already have that connection with external donors that and they're continuing your funding, that's great. But locally, there's a problem because in terms of the brands and companies are not supporting it. They have not been sustainable without grants. So if they don't have a grant currently, they're not going to be operating, which becomes a problem in terms of sustainability, which would lead me to try and think that maybe the step needs to be that all of these organizations need to stop being charity organizations, but they're organizations where they're also sustainable in its own sense, but have support from bigger organizations, which are for Football for Good overall, and working on that. So, for example, if you look at UEFA, they have that foundation, so they also have that influx coming in. They have those resources, but if you're establishing yourself as an organization here, especially in developing countries, you don't have the resources, and there's money, but you also need the people and all of that in terms of operating. And I do think that after this, though people are going to have an understanding that health and sport is important, they're going to have to start from scratch.
Yes.
And how do we do that? Yes.
I think this question with health and sport will come definitely as a key one. You need to work with new people. You are not necessarily very eager to work in the past. I mean, maybe some of the projects in South Africa we may talk later. But we had another question from Stanislav Stipkov from Bulgaria, and they say, "I hold very nice and optimistic beginning, which I fully support. Do you believe?" Oh, you get the question. Do you believe that that sports can enhance the going out of the crisis through 3 pillars: discipline, empathy, and entertainment?
Thank you very much, Stanislav. It's a very interesting question. First of all, thank you for being part of this webinar. We have to distinguish, from my point of view, and it's both personal and institutional. We have to distinguish between sport as a sport and sport as a developmental tool. Absolutely, many organizations that we work with are utilizing still the game of football, for example, for some homework, for some exercises, for some challenges. And this is the kind of common denominator. That's the language that we all speak. On the other hand, you do see that the football industry, for example, is very much struggling. Leagues are suspended, clubs are at the brink of bankruptcy. There is a huge demand of transformation of sport, and in our case, the sport called football. In that sense, my understanding of football will change, and I believe that we should not actually only see it as a entertainment matter or something that kind of brings joy to the masses. Yes, it's great, and we have fandom, and we have connected to that a lot of resources. But on the other hand, if football in this current situation does not take the chance and transform itself, it will become obsolete. We will find another mean, because the difference between the current actors in football and the community is too big. Let's take this, Pierre, maybe as the next kind of challenge for us to discuss, because if we don't take it seriously, football will not be what it was 15, 20 or 50 years ago.
Yeah, we may risk. I was following the discussion in Germany in the recent days, the debate of having the Bundesliga being back, having really much the risk of bringing a boomerang effect from the development project connected to football, because it may be seen very, very, very dangerously. Well, we had the experience, Creesen, and I would like to go to that, of the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, where a lot of projects were involving development programs, fight against IDS, and a lot of projects. And I took part to 2 conferences where they said that over 65% of the money coming for development programs regarding sport and health, not a single penny went exactly to the end of the program, not connected with any form of corruption. Just once they had done the advertisement, employed 1 or 2 persons, the money was gone, and it was it. Are there new ways of seeing it at the moment to be sure that the projects that may be connected with the pandemics will be better suited, better looked at with a better form of governance and transparency?
Thanks, Pierre, for teeing that up. I mean, I think you're very right. 2010, first World Cup in Africa, a lot of attention to my country and the continent as a whole, drove many projects, and not all of them well conceptualized enough, given the amount of resources that came in a really big peak, right? And so what ends up happening is, if you have a lack of a skills deficit locally, you end up bringing in external expertise, right? So you don't have an opportunity to grow your programs from inside and develop your key actors within them so that they take ownership of it. And what we found is we in South Africa ended up needing to bring, young, enthusiastic, volunteer / graduate student type mobilization actors into our programs in South Africa. So what ended up happening is that as they took on roles and responsibilities, a lot of that money became an administrative space, as opposed to the programs on the ground being where things were focused. Now that's the difference between having essentially a top-down approach, because the World Cup was in Africa and programs originated from someone in Germany or America or let's call it the global north, right? Whereas programs who eventually then got funding have had a slightly different trajectory. Okay, and what you find is that in my mind you've had programs that have been focused on a specific topic, okay, or thematic area like HIV/AIDS or gender-based violence, whatever it may be, and then you've had programs that have been more geographically focused, right? And the geographically focused are the ones that seem to be more sustainable because they're embedded in the community no matter what. The value that they're offering the participants, the beneficiaries, transcend whatever the people, what the people need is what they're going to do. Whether it's nutrition-based, health-based, employment-related, entrepreneurship, whatever. It's not a program that is focused on HIV/AIDS education and then has to spread everywhere throughout the country, because you might be neglecting other aspects of people's needs in a community. And so that's the difference and the shift I see that this is going to have, is the programs that are more embedded are going to be the ones that are going to be sustainable.
Well, and I believe that one of the new changes is probably the cost in travel will be reduced. Vladimir and I, we have this particularity that we spend a lot of time in our lives outside home for development programs abroad, and clearly that we need to think it differently, to give more space to the local people, to spend much more on the ground and much less on the administrative and traveling costs, even if the local people really wants us to come, to show to the people.
Yeah, Pierre, thank you for reminding me that I never spent so much time in one place in the last 20 years at my home in Belgrade. Everybody's happy about that. But what we realize is that yes, as humanity, we have developed technology, so we are connected today. And what Creesen mentions is really a really great example from South Africa, where we can see that technology merged with local volunteering, with local people who want to make a change, will be the future of development. We cannot sustain the models of international aid, both in the less privileged countries, but also in the northern hemisphere, without looking at those sources that we have at hand. We cannot continue thinking about transfer of knowledge via the development agencies, because it didn't prove right. It did not prove that we are enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of local work if we bring aid workers from the US, Germany, or Sweden. No, we have to empower the local people. And relating to a question from YouTube that I just read, how can young professionals in the developing countries make a change? Exactly with that. Look into your local communities and search for solutions. Combine technology and volunteering. Do something beyond your paid job that makes a change. And if we do that, 7 billion people, or 3 billion people at least, every week for 90 minutes of our lives, it's a football match, we can really have a big impact on the planet and on the people. So from my point of view, Creesen, building on what you mentioned, technology plus volunteering will be the essential contributor and amplifier of social change worldwide.
Yeah, I know that on this point, Khadija doesn't necessarily 100% agree with you, because she believes that, I mean, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I know that you have a different point of view regarding the importance of technology.
No, I think technology is probably the way forward. I mean, my concern is in terms of who is equipped to use it. How well are they equipped in terms of resources? But then it also goes into volunteering and using only volunteers for sports for development organizations, because I mean, when I worked on ground, that's always been a problem in terms of who's going to match the volunteers. Are they sustainable enough? Are you going to be able to have sustained impact? And now if you're also bringing in technology, and for example, if your NGO only has enough funding to support 3 individuals, they're already spread out so thin. How are you going to get them to work into kind of managing your volunteers, but also the technology? And yeah, even during this time, even if during like COVID, you can see there's so many resources that are available online and they're for free because we have technology. But how many people, especially in developing countries, are effectively able to use those? Now, that means that we have to take a step back and figure out how are we going to get to them and how are we going to make sure everyone has access to it. And that becomes a fundamental big, I mean, there are already so many people who have access to it, but you really want to get to the communities, right? And make sure it's sustainable. So my concern comes in, how do we make sure that NGOs are able to build their capacity so that they can use these technologies? And how do you make sure that there are enough funding to manage these volunteers and all of that, and whether we should be kind of pushing these local organizations to start being sustainable and earning in a sustainable way and not only relying on outside funding, and how can we push them to do this now?
Khadija, I think you are asking some of the key questions really of the current moment of the development programs. And as Vladimir anticipated, Hassan Mujaba, is doing our course currently from CIES in India, is asking, how can young professionals looking at global examples of sustainable business model in developing countries, apart from the community-based model, what else can be a part?
Yeah, Creesen, you might want to pick it up because you are a social entrepreneur, and what you have done in the last decade is really a very good example. Just talking from experience, it is really in every one of us who wants to drive social change to figure it out, my friend. It is not only about seeing a best practice, it's also about looking at the need of the community. It's looking at the need of the people around you and looking for a model how to change that. So there is no recipe for it. There is no panacea to change the world. It's in us how we approach it, and it's in you how you see your local community, what can you exactly do for it, and then go for it. All of us in this group did that, and many others who are watching us today are doing the same. So just take the challenge on the horns and go for it. There is no prescription how to do it. You can look at some, let's say, inspiration or some models, but many of the people who started local change in the communities had no role model. They just started because they felt for it. So you also, as a young businessman, go for a solution that is close to your heart.
Creesen.
Yeah, thank you, Pierre. Yeah, Vlad, perfect synopsis of that. You know, I actually agree. You know, the most successful development practitioners I know are incredibly mission driven. You know, they're not, you know, they don't necessarily apply for jobs. They work out the thing they want to work on and find a way that they can do it, whether that's actually their role as employment or whether that's something they do on the side of their day job. So it's quite a difficult question, especially, I mean, I've had it a lot when I've been on panels and stuff where people want to know, well, how did you manage to get funding for your projects and how do you sustain your funding? And you know, I don't think there's a playbook that makes it easy. We have a fairly out there, probably controversial way to do it, which is every organization that I'm a part of that works in the development space, the NGO space, has it written into its founding documents that our objective is to not exist anymore, right? Our objective is to work on something and empower people to the point that we don't have to be there. And we've gotten, in one or two examples, we've gotten to the place where we're going, cool, job's done. We're going to step out of this. And that means you, as leading your organization or working in the space, have to also be constantly seeking change and growth and personal development. Because if you're beholden to your role in your own organization, then you can't have your organization work in that way. And that's the difference between, you know, a development practitioner, and you think about sustainability in terms of the system working no matter what, versus you run a football club and you want to make sure your club is sustainable and your club makes money, etc., and wins trophies, etc. It's a different approach. It's a different mindset. And so that's my bit of advice, or how I've approached it and managed to, you know, to continue adding value. So yeah, I'll stop there.
That's a key issue. I mean, should sport be an element to move and develop basic needs, or be an end on itself? For all of us, it's evident that sport is not an end on itself. That's a lot more complicated issue needs to be involved, and much more things need to be involved with it. I think at the moment, where I'm absolutely passionate with what you said, all three of you, and where I see huge problem is about the new ethics that need to be created. Can we imagine sports development programs without health part in it? Can we imagine sports development programs without education? Probably different kind of understanding education, without as well different kind of understanding collaboration between the various groups. I think these terms needs to be really looked at seriously currently, because that's where the solution may come out. I don't know what you would like to say on that, but the term of the new form of collaborations that we are looking at, and the questions came to that as well. They like to see which are the new trends that can bring to a better life, to a better future, to a better place of sports in development programs. What are the kind of things that probably have no future, and which other may be more and more developing? Are they elements connected to groups? Are they elements connected to competitions? Are they elements connected to education and to health? Or how can we combine all these elements at the moment? Who wants to start?
Yeah, this is a dissertation that you are asking for, you know. I know you're a professor. Come on. This is a full thesis for a group of students, you know. But okay, let's try. Khadija, Creesen, let's answer this one. Let me give you an example. At Street Football World, we are obviously close to the communities, but we are also trying to be close to the football business. And a few years ago, we started together with Juan Mata, the player of Manchester United and Spain, to form a movement. It's called Common Goal. And Pierre, if you ask me what exactly are we trying there? Yes, it's about the flux of funds. Every player and both male and female who join pledge 1% of their salary. But it's actually, my friends, about changing consciousness, about changing the setup of a whole generation towards purpose life, towards purposeful relationships, towards non-isolated jobs. You are a player, but it doesn't mean that you're not a human. It's a way of transforming that generation and them being role models for the next generation, that will be more empathic, more understanding that if I have enough, I should be also spending not only money, but time and my kind of aura towards something better in the world. And that change of consciousness is something that I believe a few generations beyond us will need to drive forward. And then we will have a world that is more suited to actually what we want to achieve. Yes, Pierre, we can go back to Thomas Hobbes and the other philosophers and saying we will not achieve it. But let's go for an optimistic view.
You're the optimist today. Khadija, any point you would add like to add on that?
Like Vlad said, this is a huge topic. But ethics, I definitely think needs to change. I think sport in itself has this huge capacity, and like you said, it's not the end, it's a means to an end. So how do we kind of incorporate it? How do we make sure that it is, just like enabling people to understand life skills and how they should be living as a good human being and all of that. So in terms of, the question has come up whether when you look at sport in terms of entertainment, should all the players be getting the amount of money that they are getting? It's brought out questions about whether gender pay and equal pay is really a concern. And I mean, majority think that it is. But so how do we kind of get this capitalist structure out and get, sport in its essence to come out? Because otherwise we might as well, it's losing its essence. It's all about building community get together. It's about getting equality or equity, at least, if not equality. But how do we make sure that when we get out of it, it's not really about just money making? Money making is important, but at the expense of what? You're looking at structures failing right now. We're actually observing that elite sport we can do without it. We can do without events. Yes, they're going to be postponed, but currently everyone is surviving. So what does that bring into play? I do think the ethics has to change. I'm not entirely sure how.
No, I think that the word of ethics is absolutely crucial. There is one question from Mashal Hussain from Pakistan, and she asked, well, developing sport has to be part of sport for development in countries that don't have infrastructure, isn't it? She asked, what about developing sports industries in countries that don't have lucrative leagues, like your country?
This is the question that I've had living here. It's important. I believe it's important in the holistic approach that you need to develop sport in its elite sense as well, to try and get people to understand the importance of it, or try and get people to come out and play. And right now, there's such disparity when you look at, for example, on TV, how you see, for example, football versus how you experience it. And if you don't have the infrastructure here, if everyone is just trying to, follow the money aspect of it, how do we get a sustainable society to stand up? You need to build a foundation. So I will pass it on to other Vlad, at least. I suppose in Germany, where majority he's been, is you have that component of elite sport. You have that, the top already figured out, and then you're able to go down. So it's more of a top-down approach. What do you do when you don't have the infrastructure? What do you do when you don't have people understanding what sport means, or that it's necessary, or any of that, or in people not wanting to even invest in it?
Honestly, I don't. I was optimist so far. Let me be a bit, disruptive today. I don't think that we need elite sport for development. No, I think that we need incredible investment in education. I'm not the first one to say. But I know a young girl from Pakistan. I met her recently at the Vice Summit in Doha. She was telling me that she's educated children at her rooftop, just during her voluntary time. She finished her studies and she's doing that for the girls in the community. If we have that consciousness that only through education we will have better communities, that we will have better medical care, that we will have better epidemiologists who will take care about this situation today. I'm with you, Khadija. I don't follow any more flash score. I'm a follower of tennis, basketball, football. I live still without it for 2 months. I'm kind of, you know, and it's good. It's fine. I play sports outdoor in the neighborhood with some children that I can catch, and we still play some football, tennis. But this is sport for me. We really don't need elite sport for this planet to survive. And unfortunately, elite sport did not yet realize. What we need is the right for children to play and to be educated.
I completely agree with you, Vladimir, from this point of view. And one of the elements has been seen in the sporting press in the last 2 months. Their incapacity to speak a lot about. I saw in L'Equipe or in Gazzetta dello Sport very little about sport development project. It would be the right time to imagine what's the importance of such projects. Very little about it. I moved to one of our speakers of last week, which was Tuba Sibanda from Namibia, who was part of the webinar last week. But she has a question today. What is the thought on the feasibility and sustainability of the Sustainable Development Goals model? She's very precise with the word. Okay. Well, this part I agree with Khadija. I didn't see that in my paper, so you can read it. I agree with Khadija and Vladimir that the format or approach that if you take it out, I cannot see. Sorry, I need to see the all questions. Thank you. For sport to be key tool for sustainable community economy and people development in nations, we need to capitalize and piggyback on multi-sectorial events. The United Nations has put sport as super important enabler for its achievement on multiple development goals, sustainable development goals. And what is your thought on the feasibility and sustainability of this sustainable development goal model approach with S4D movement? Sport for development movement. Very specific question. Who wants to start? You're all involved with that. Do you want to start, Creesen?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. You know, I think it actually is an extension of some of the points that have been made on the last question, really. You know, as in, what is the intrinsic value of sport? You know, essentially, sport is education. Sport is as wellness. Sport is a part of health, community building. Even sport as the pursuit of excellence has a role to play in the Sustainable Development Goals, because that's a part of the holistic development of a human being and of communities, of countries, of essentially the human race. Very, you know, that fits easily. Sport is entertainment, and sport is elite sport, and is more a reflection of you know, the global world order, which is, you know, it's a microcosm of the way power and money is concentrated in a very unequal way. Because so when you focus on sport for development, it's actually that docks in with the Sustainable Development Goals far better than sport as entertainment at an elite level. It's actually quite hard to connect the dots on that one, and especially when, you know, the primary drivers of the sports industry is sponsorship, much of which can be very questionable as to how those funds are generated, which would bring them directly in conflict with UN agencies, for example. So to answer, you know, to speak to the Sustainable Development Goals, when you're talking about health and wellness and, you know, like SDG 4 in terms of education, very easy to see how sport for development connects to that. But the reality is that if you want to have that funded or harnessed through elite sport, professional sport, sport as entertainment, then you're kind of getting the last bit of, the last bit of juice out of the orange that you're trying to squeeze here, as opposed to sport being an intrinsic part of society, okay, which then makes it, essentially a government mandate, or as Vladimir says, the first sector. You're then talking about all those little courts that get put up in communities. Those are far more important than massive stadiums that get put up for international matches. And we focus on the former, you align with the SDGs. When you focus on the latter, it's the Hollywood of sport.
Vlad,
I think my opinion about United Nations SDGs and everything that we survived so far, I keep to a private conversation with you, for example, when we meet again. Because this is, or we do a next webinar on that. I'm happy to do it because it's such a complex issue. It's such a complex issue. But to the question of our dear colleague from Namibia, invest in people, invest in the community, invest in the next generation. Don't ask your government what you should do. Do what you feel and forget about the SDGs. Do what is close to the community where you are living, and you will contribute to a better world. If it's called Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, or something that we will invent for 2050 as the next goal, don't care about that. Let the governments care about it because they sign it. And the problem with that signature is they can withdraw it anytime. They can withdraw funding the World Health Organization. They can withdraw funding any UN agency. Don't look at that. Look at the desperate need in your community and invest in the various elements that I mentioned.
I think we will have to finish very soon. There is one more question, the last one by Hassan, Rafael Shilengita, and he wants to know what would you recommend to young professionals to look for? I mean, in any platform for a young professional to showcase their project or get any assistance in terms of funds, is there any help for them? Goodwill to good actions. How can we transform one in the other? Who wants to answer? Question in your organization. Oh, Khadija, please.
No, I mean, I was just going to refer to the fact that, especially during these times, there are a lot of funding that is available. There are a lot of things that are starting up that we can collectively look at in terms of if you want funding, but also, like Vlad said, look at what your community wants, look at their needs, and try and bring out what you want to do. And then from there on, try and approach or find the right connections that could assist in trying to get those funding. That does become a lot of work, especially if you're one of the first few trying to do that in your community. But I guess that's where, you have to start somewhere, right? So I would say use the resources that are available, especially as we're coming out of hopefully we're coming out of these times. But there's a lot more awareness in terms of health and education, and sport is a great tool to try and have all of these skills being transferred to your communities, and also just find the connections who would try and assist in these, and that's about it.
No, I think you touched today. I'm very thankful to all three of you because you touched today one of the key issues: sport matters. We all believe sport matters. Sport matters in helping, developing ideas, changing patterns, putting people together, developing programs, developing education programs. But sport matters not in any necessary form. And it was very interesting to see your point of view and to see as well the necessity to continue to question ourselves. What can we do that is acceptable, that is ethically essential? I think what is our strength is our ethical point of view. It's much more important than anything else. I mean, if we look at the case of Pakistan and Bangladesh, when there was 25 years ago, I was a bit involved in that. the start of the problem with Nike and Adidas and the making of football there. It's because of an ethical issue that all the process started, and it had a long term of very innovative and positive development elements with some mistakes as well. But these are the elements that make it change. It must be a driven force that is not necessarily, as Vladimir said, the elite sport. Elite sport may be useful on certain moments to see a nice show, spectacle, and nice people, and as well technical development. But a lot that matters, and you showed it so evidently today, is how to connect sport with the development of society and a better world. That's what we are looking for. I would like to give all of you 1 minute or 1 minute and a half each of you for a concluding notes, if you have any, and then I will present next week's webinar. It has been a very, very pleasant day. Who want to start? I start from the bottom. Creesen, what would you like to say at the end of the discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you mission driven, if you really work out what it is you're passionate about, and if it is development through sports, if it is high performance, whatever the thing is that you're really passionate about, that helps guide what you do next. And I think it's very important to just look intrinsically and work out what the values are you possess and you want your projects to follow, and kind of stick to those as best you can, because that's what I find is, or I believe is, truly sustainable. Have those values at your core, and then move forward from there on your journey of learning and growing. That's what I can say.
Vladimir.
Yeah, we're a great gentleman. We leave Khadija for the last finishing sentence. Khadija, get ready for it. I will tell you an anecdote, and I'm full of them. It's a dear friend, Bob Munro, who founded Mathare Youth Sport Association in Kenya, Nairobi, the Mathare slum, home to 500,000 people living really in hard conditions. When he came from Canada as a United Nations worker, he had a football with him, and he thought, yes, with this I will get them. So he give the ball to the young boys and girls, they play some football, but then they didn't come the next day. The same happened a few days after, and then he thought, okay, what could I give them on top? And he brought some paper and pencil. They stayed for 25 years. This is sport as an amplifier, but we need to invest into education. Education is the key, my friends.
Well, thanks, Vladimir, for that. Khadija.
I would like to build on both of them. Again, being purpose-driven, it's very important. And in terms of your mission, doing what you can do, I think is very, very important, especially for sports for development. And I think everyone needs to be involved. Sport, again, is in its elite sense, is that's not where we want to get at, but we want people to start feeling like they're part of a community. You want to build that. And that is not only through football, it's about what you are teaching also through football. And I think that is very key. And just like Vlad said, education, he got paper and pen. It's not about the fact that you're playing, but it's also about, when you come out and play football, you're going to feel part of a community. You're going to start actually being, your brain is going to have more juices flowing, and you're going to be more creative, and you're going to want to do more things. And essentially, even if you look at, for example, what makes girls play and stick in teams is not the fact that they want to be competitive. It's more about that they feel like they're part of a community, that they are heard, or that they feel that they belong, and all of that. And we need to remember the essence of that. The reason that we started playing sport and we still want to play it is, it kind of gives us a workout, and we can score goals on other people or nutmeg other people, but it goes beyond that. And I think everyone should by now realize that, and how can they do their own part while they're living in the communities.
Well, great. You can subscribe to the webinar if you want. No money involved at all. It's not a money-driven element. I would like to really thank all three of you about this aspect. And I hope we will have the possibility in the future in a FIFA masterclass, maybe to continue this discussion. What I would like you to note is our 6th webinar that will take place next week. So thanks, Creesen, Khadija, and Vladimir, and it was really a pleasure. Next Wednesday, same time, we will have another webinar, number 6, back on the industry then. Football transfer during the pandemics. Who are the losers? Who are the winners? Thank you very much, and take care. Bye.